Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. Premier Doug Ford says the province is ready to retaliate as Donald Trump shows no signs of backing down from his threat to impose hefty tariffs on Canadian goods once he comes into office. Ford and other Canadian premiers held a virtual meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau today to hear his plan to address Trump's border concerns and to discuss what to do in the face of his tariff threats. Dale Manukduk reports.
Premier Doug Ford emerged from a virtual meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the other premiers ready for a fight.
Folks, this is coming. It's not if it is, it's coming. And it's coming January 20th or 21st. And we need to be prepared. We need to stand as a country.
The meeting was to discuss U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on all goods from Canada and Mexico unless the borders are secured to prevent drugs and crime from flowing into the U.S. Ford says Canada will hit our southern neighbors right back.
We will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my number one job is to protect Ontario.
Ford has been touting Ontario as the U.S.'s #1 trading partner, the #1 export destination to 17 states and second to 11 other states, and has been stressing the $500 billion in annual trade the province does with the U.S. He's been spreading that word on American airwaves, bringing his street cred to CNBC.
We're there to strengthen our relationship, not hurt our relationship.
And appearing on Fox News.
We have to tighten up our border on both sides of the border, not just on the Canadian side. And we're just stronger together. To compare us to China and Mexico, you got to be kidding me.
This ally to the north.
But it's not just TV interviews. The Ford government is also running ads in the U.S.
Shared values and a shared vision for what we can achieve together.
Ford is encouraging the other premiers to do the same if they have the resources and also to go down to the U.S. in person, something Ontario Minister of Economic Development Vic Fedeli did on Monday, referring to it as a charm offensive, taking a proactive approach to reinforce relations.
In some cases, that came as a very complete surprise, or the fact that 60% of all the oil they import in the U.S. comes from Canada, 10% from Mexico, the rest from Saudi and Venezuela, very small amounts. You know, putting a 25% tariff on 60% of your import, your price of gasoline would go up astronomically the very next morning.
Ford says Ottawa is committed to strengthening the border and is prepared to fulfill his request for better communication between police agencies, more drones at the border, more boots on the ground, and more patrol dogs, because...
And I say this respectfully to the president, he's a different type of cat, to say the least.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
A Toronto cycling advocacy group is challenging the province in court. It's arguing the Ford government's plan to remove several major bike lanes in the city will only put people in harm's way. Alicia Son has the details.
For weeks, the folks at Cycle TO have been rallying to stop the province from ripping up bike lanes. Now they've changed their tactic. They're taking them to court.
This case argues that removing existing heavily used protected bike lanes on major routes in the city of Toronto infringes the rights of life and security of the person, which are guaranteed by Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Cycle TO was flanked by legal representatives at Queen's Park today, announcing they're seeking an injunction to prevent the removal of the bike lanes on Bloor, University Avenue, and Yonge Street.
Removing bike lanes will increase the risk of death and serious harm to people who travel by bike in this city. It will make the roads more dangerous for everyone.
In fact, noticeably absent from today's press conference is Cycle TO's executive director, Michael Longfield.
Michael was injured by a driver on Monday on his bike and is now at the hospital recovering from a 6-hour surgery that took place last night.
Yeah, it's awful. He was biking on a secondary road, St. George, which has a painted bike lane, when he was doored. And he is recovering in the hospital and he's expected to make a full recovery. But it's a really unfortunate example of, painted bike lanes isn't physical infrastructure that actually protects cyclists from vehicular traffic.
Last month, the province passed Bill 212, which allows them to rip out existing infrastructure and protects the province from lawsuits should a cyclist be injured or die on a road where a bike lane was removed. Allison Stewart of Cycle TO says removing the bike lanes probably won't speed up traffic the way the province hopes it will.
Part of the big concern is that many of those people are going to go back to driving for those that have access to a car. So in fact, it will likely increase traffic congestion, not to mention the fact that if the province goes ahead by using their own contractors to rip up the bike lanes, there's going to be the added traffic congestion caused by more construction taking place.
The Premier has said bike lanes should be on secondary roads, not main streets. We were sent a statement from the Transportation Minister's office today that says, quote, gridlock is at an all-time high and we need to deliver on our plan to keep people moving by bringing sanity back to bike lanes and building new roads, highways and transit. We can't let activists who represent less than 1% of the population force families to sit in traffic any longer. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
We're hearing from TTC officials after a disastrous morning commute for many people. Signal issues once again halted subway trains on the busy Line 1 right in the middle of the morning rush hour. TTC officials say their signaling system went offline, but they have no idea why. Chris Glover has more.
Once again, via Bedford exit entrance.
Service announcements blare through subway stations along Line 1 during the morning rush hour.
There were constant announcements saying one thing, and then the operators were telling us another. So I ended up just sticking there for a little bit and waiting it out.
Passengers told a signal issue halted trains on the city's busiest route. Shuttle buses barely able to take the load of commuters.
They were telling us it's going to take about 30 minutes for the shuttle buses to arrive.
I'm upset because I am already late at work, like an hour.
Ivy Villanueva was caught up in the mess for 2 hours, going from Yonge and Eglinton to Yonge and St. Clair. That's a 30-minute walk.
Did you have to call your boss?
No, yeah, he called me already, and it got busy at work, so it's such a hassle.
While it took hours to clear the backlog, the shutdown itself only lasted for about 25 minutes. Still, it impacted the entirety of Line 1 during the busy morning rush hour, and it wasn't the first major recent disruption, not even the first one this week.
This is the third time in less than 1 week.
Mujgan Hegi dealt with today's commuter chaos along with another this past Monday and last Wednesday, each time signal issues shutting down Line 1.
This is not acceptable in our city.
I know you guys are on the good list. That's a first.
Yeah. The commuter chaos derailing the TTC's annual holiday train launch.
This is software, this is technology. We will figure it out and we will do the best for our customers throughout.
TTC interim CEO Greg Percy says a server that operates the signaling system went offline for unknown reasons. That triggered a fail-safe mechanism to stop the service.
And it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. If the train control system can't see the train on a software package, it's going to stop the system. We will not run an unsafe system.
The TTC is working with the equipment manufacturer to investigate why it's happening so often and to try to fix it.
We're working on it, and when we have a better answer, we will come back with a more detailed timeline of what actually occurred and what we're doing to prevent this from happening in the future.
I guess, is that good enough, though? Because wasn't there just this whole signaling overhaul recently, and shouldn't that have fixed a lot of the problems that people are dealing with? And it's not just this week either.
So it's not just been this week, but unfortunately it's this week. There's just been a lot of issues.
As for future shutdowns,
I'm not going to give false promises. I don't do false promises.
No promises, another one isn't around the corner. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police are asking for the public's help to identify a man struck and killed by a TTC bus near Ossington Station last night. It happened at around 8:30. Police say the man had just left the subway station when he was pinned beneath the bus, making a right-hand turn onto Ossington Avenue. He died of his injuries in hospital. Police describe him as a 55-year-old Asian man, 5'4", and about 176 pounds. He was wearing green camouflage pants and a dark-colored winter jacket. The TTC says it is assisting police in their investigation. Toronto is opening 4 warming centres this evening as temperatures drop. The city also announcing new details today on its plans to open new permanent emergency shelters in the coming years. It's all part of a strategy to increase shelter capacity. But as the city's own numbers show, it doesn't come close to meeting the current need. Sarah McMillan reports.
As the temperature drops, an increased focus on those sleeping on the streets. Toronto's shelter system is over capacity. It accommodates close to 12,000 people each night, but numbers from the city show on average more than 200 are turned away.
In my experience, most people have just given up calling.
Greg Cook is with Sanctuary Toronto. He says in his 15 years as an outreach worker, he's seen the homelessness crisis become more and more dire. To help meet the growing need, Toronto has a plan to open 20 more permanent shelters across the city by 2033.
As a city, we continue to do what we can to meet the needs of more and more people.
The first 6 locations to be announced are spread throughout the city. The first 2 are set to open in 2027, one at Dufferin and St. Clair, and the other on Gerrard, east of Victoria Park. The new shelters will have room for about 80 people each. They'll be largely replacing existing temporary shelter spaces, and staff say the total net new spaces in 2033 will be about 400.
Which isn't going to even meet the need now, and I anticipate that need will increase.
Staff also revealed there are more than 450 tents and structures at homeless encampments throughout the city. Councillor Alejandra Bravo says the city is doing what it can.
I think it's important to remember that what's missing here is the housing. So if we are going to solve this, it is not with endlessly building shelter space. What we need is to invest with everything that we have in housing.
The city is also updating its plans to help people this winter, including opening a new 30-space warming center at Metro Hall for cold nights, plus a new surge center for days when temperatures reach -15. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
A man has been arrested after a series of holes and tunnels were discovered during a police encampment check. Police were patrolling encampments in Gage Park yesterday when they found a hole approximately 6 feet deep. Upon further investigating, they found a series of tunnels with extension cords and other electrical wiring running through them. Police determined that one man was responsible and arrested him after a brief foot chase. Now, he's facing mischief and drug charges. The tents in the encampment have been relocated as the city makes repairs to the ground. The case of an Ontario elementary school teacher accused of sex offenses against multiple students was back in court today. Thomas Dagla has new details about the charges she's facing and reaction from the community.
On the first week of the school year, police showed up at the home of a grade 8 teacher now accused of sex crimes against multiple students. Barred from her workplace while she's on unpaid leave, Kellyanne Jennings is facing 20 charges.
I would say as a sexual assault investigator, it is rare.
On Wednesday, Jennings' lawyer appeared by video link as a court heard her case will play out well into the new year. A teacher at this Ontario Catholic school, the 40-year-old is accused of misconduct with at least 4 minors, and police suspect there may be more.
Sexual offenses of this nature involving a teacher, that's very concerning to every aspect of the community.
According to court records obtained by CBC News, Jennings is accused of sexually assaulting a boy under 14 in April, and weeks later she allegedly produced child pornography, purportedly involving pictures and video on a platform like Snapchat. Police say Jennings broke her bail conditions twice in October by attending places like this where children are likely to be. She was then released on bail again, and this time she is allowed to come to locations like this as long as her own children and her surety are with her. No one answered when we stopped by her home, and Jennings' lawyer declined to comment on the case. This smiling yearbook entry reads Mrs. Jennings' #1 rule is respect yourself and others. A parent of one former student told CBC News she was shocked and at first hoped it was all a terrible misunderstanding, calling such allegations damaging for any community. This expert says sex crimes by women often go unreported.
The question is it more underreported than sexual offending by men? We have no idea.
The allegations against Jennings have not been proven in court. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Port Hope.
Welcome back. Police are searching for a stolen Jeep and a 4-year-old chocolate lab named Roxy, who was inside the vehicle at the time. Now, here's some photos of Roxy. She's been missing since about 9 this morning when the white Jeep Grand Cherokee was stolen near Bloor Street West and Highway 427. The license plate is CVRB054. Now, we spoke to the owner of the Jeep tonight about what happened and the search for Roxy.
So I was driving my daughter to school, had the dog in the back of the car, just brought her along for the ride. And I dropped my daughter off and I was still in the school parking lot waiting to turn. I was waiting behind a few other cars that were waiting to turn out of the parking lot. And I had my window down a little bit and a man approached me fairly aggressively. And he just said, get out of the car right now or I'm going to have to hurt some of the kids at the school, something along those lines. So I was obviously completely shocked and I just said, yeah, no problem. Grabbed my phone, opened the door, got out of the car, said, go ahead, it's all yours. He took off. I was relieved. Obviously nobody got hurt. And that's when I realized like a minute or two later that, just through all the shock and commotion that, I'd forgotten that our dog was in the car. So that's all. We're just concerned about trying to get her back safely. I don't care about the car or anything. Nobody was hurt. It's just trying to get the dog back.
Miller says Roxy is very friendly and people shouldn't be afraid to approach her if they see her. The suspected carjacker is described as a man in his 30s with a short, light-colored beard. Peel police say the Jeep may have made its way to their region. As animal shelters across the city continue to see high intake numbers, the Toronto Humane Society is launching a new campaign aimed at preventing pets from being abandoned. As Tyreek Reed shows us, it's using the story of a puppy named Clementine to help drive home its message.
She's a pretty healthy, happy 4-month-old puppy at this point.
French bulldog Clementine is doing much better than she was when she was brought into the Toronto Humane Society in October. Clementine was left in a chip box in a Toronto park at just 8 weeks old. A crowd of onlookers found her bleeding until eventually someone jumped into action and took her to the shelter.
When she came in, our team were able to quickly realize that she had an emergency situation called a rectal prolapse. And so she needed surgery. It was really the only solution. And so thankfully, we were able to get the medical team responding really quickly.
She says if Clementine hadn't received timely treatment, she would have suffered life-threatening complications. Since her recovery, Clementine's been adopted into a new home. The Humane Society suspects Clementine was abandoned because her previous owners could no longer afford to care for her, something they say is becoming more common.
The rising costs of living are making it impossible for people to choose between their finances and emergency or care for their pets, and we want to help.
That help comes in the form of a new Keep Pets in the Picture campaign being launched by the Humane Society. It aims to raise money to assist those who are financially struggling to care for their pets, while encouraging owners to seek help if they need it.
We're talking about animal pet parents, we're talking about families, we want them to stay together.
Other animal shelters say they've also noticed an increase in abandoned pets and intake numbers.
I have over 1,500 requests just for 2024. Last year it was, I think 800 or 900. So we're seeing, an upward climb.
She says it's not only the cost of living that's contributing to the issue.
We don't have enough adopters. We don't have enough fosters. There are not enough rescues and shelters that can intake these pets.
The Humane Society is encouraging people to consider fostering a pet to ensure animals like Clementine always have a home. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, Colette, as you had warned us, the cold making its return tonight.
Yes, it's that weather whiplash, which we often talk about, and here it comes. Are you ready for it? Because we're going to find these temperatures really plummeting, and we have to watch out for the wind chills too, because the winds are going to be strong, so you factor those in, and you do need to be dressed appropriately. Make sure the kids are dressed appropriately as well as you're sending them out the door. This is how it looks. So you see those pinks and, sort of orange shades. That's all that moisture, the winds kind of pulling that up from the Gulf. And and that's the heavy rain that's happening to the east of us where it's milder. But you see that dip from about Winnipeg over towards Windsor. That is what we call a trough, and that is allowing that colder air from the Arctic to dip into that dip and come our way and really have an impact on not only our temperatures, but bringing that cold air with these strong winds across the lakes with the mild fall. You know, these waters are open waters, and so it can pick up all that moisture. And it's actually a blizzard warning you see there around Owen Sound through the Blue Mountains, where visibility could be near zero at times. Snow squall warning, the whole area, very widespread, that you see in pink. And it's those cases we're talking about maybe 20 to 30 or even 40 centimeters of snow, but in the blizzard warned area, it could be even higher amounts. Around Bracebridge, Gravenhurst also could be higher amounts with snowfall rates of 5 to 10 centimeters per hour. And this is a long event because the winds have been kicking up, so we see those having an impact tonight through the day on Thursday, probably some of the worst of it. But look at some areas still getting a streamer there near Lake Muskoka going all the way into Friday. So we'll all experience the winds, even though for the GTA, like southwestern Ontario, it's really just going to be some flurries at times, but we'll all get into these winds gusting over 60 and in some cases over 70 kilometers an hour. You can see in that sort of dark navy, almost black color, 40 to 60 centimeters. And locally, there'll be areas seeing even higher amounts than that. So after we dip to -7 overnight tonight in Toronto, around -5 at 7 a.m., the wind chill, though, making it feel closer to -15, and even tomorrow afternoon. Even when it comes up to -5, a balmy -5, it's still going to feel like -12 because of those strong winds. There will be a warm-up coming. There's sun on Friday. That's nice to see. And then a gradual warm-up comes as we get towards the weekend.
A gentle warm-up, I will take it.
Yes, we'll be looking forward to it after what's coming in the next few days.
I'm sure. Hey, thanks so much, Colette. That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.